I stepped through the front door of our two-story house in the quiet suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina, the weight of another exhausting day clinging to me like dust from a construction site. It was late September, around 7 or p.m., and the evening air carried a chill that matched the emptiness I'd been feeling lately. At 39, I was no stranger to hard work. I'd been the head of engineering at a major tech firm for years, leading teams that built software systems worth millions. But 3 months ago, the layoffs hit and I was out. Now I scraped by with freelance gigs fixing code for small startups from home. It wasn't glamorous, but I kept things together, my shirt-pressed shoes, polished, and a steady demeanor that hid the fatigue in my eyes. The house smelled of takeout pizza and something sharper red wine, maybe. I set my keys on the hall table, expecting the usual quiet evening. Layla, my wife of 5 years, was lounging on the sofa in the living room, legs crossed elegantly, her phone in one hand and a glass of Cabernet in the other. She looked polished as always, her dark hair falling in waves over her shoulders, makeup flawless. But there was no warmth in her eyes when she glanced up, just a cold, calculated stare. On her lap sat a stack of papers neatly printed and clipped together, divorce papers. My heart skipped, but I kept my voice even. "What's this?" I asked, standing in the doorway, my bag still slung over my shoulder. She didn't even set down her phone. "Sign it," she said flatly, her tone like she was discussing the weather. I froze. "What, Layla? What's going on?" She finally looked at me, her lips curling into a smirk that didn't reach her eyes. "You're nothing anymore, Ethan. No job, no ambition, no real man left in you. I deserve better, and I've chosen Ryan." Ryan, the name hit like a punch. Ryan Green, my best friend since college. We'd started that tech company together back in the day, coding late nights in dorm rooms, dreaming big. He was the charismatic one, the salesman who closed deals while I built the backbone. Even after the layoffs, he'd kept his position, rising to executive level. And now, this. As if on cue, Ryan emerged from the kitchen holding a beer, wearing the shirt I'd given him for his birthday last year, a casual button-down I'd picked, because it matched his style. He leaned against the doorframe, avoiding my gaze at first. "You chose this?" I asked in my voice, steady but low. "Really, Ryan?" He shrugged finally, meeting my eyes with a casual indifference that stung more than any words. "You've got nothing left to hold on to, man." Layla pointed to the suitcase by the front door, my suitcase packed and zipped tight. "I'm keeping the house, the car, everything inside. You just need to take yourself out of my life." Her words landed like blows, each one deliberate, her mouth twisting in triumph. She leaned back, sipping her wine as if this was just another business decision. I stood there for a moment, the room spinning slightly. The familiar couch, where we'd watched movies, the photos on the walls from our wedding, the kitchen where I'd cooked breakfast on weekends, all of it tainted now. I didn't yell, I didn't beg. What was the point? I'd given everything to this marriage, the long hours, the sacrifices, even adding her name to the house deed to make her feel secure. But now, seeing her like this with him, it clicked. This wasn't a sudden betrayal. It had been building hidden behind her smiles and my trust. Without another word, I walked over, picked up the suitcase, and headed for the door. Layla's laughter followed me, sharp, mocking. "That's it. No, fight God, you're pathetic." I paused at the threshold, hand on the knob, but I didn't turn back. "Goodbye, Layla. Ryan." The door clicked shut behind me, the sound final in the quiet evening. I tossed the suitcase into the trunk of my old sedan, the one car she hadn't claimed, and slid into the driver's seat. As I started the engine, the streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows. My hands gripped the wheel knuckles white, but my mind was clear. They thought I'd lost everything, that I was broken, defeated. No. This was just the beginning. I'd take back what was mine, not with anger, but with precision. They had no idea what was coming. 2 weeks after that humiliating night, I found myself in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in the heart of uptown Charlotte. It wasn't much a basic kitchenette, a worn couch, and a bed that creaked under my weight, but it was mine paid for with cash from a freelance gig I'd picked up debugging some startup's app. The building was old, with thin walls that let in the hum of traffic from Tryon Street below, but it gave me space to think. No more shared silences with Layla, no more pretending everything was fine. I unpacked the suitcase slowly, hanging my few shirts in the closet, stacking books on a rickety shelf. The valise she'd packed for me was sparse, some clothes, a toothbrush, a few old photos I'd slipped in myself. Nothing of real value, or so she thought. I didn't waste time wallowing. Each morning I'd grab my laptop and head to a nearby coffee shop on East Trade Street, the kind with exposed brick walls and free Wi-Fi that never dropped. I'd order a black coffee, find a corner table away from the crowd, and get to work. Not job hunting, though I wasn't ready for that yet. No, I spent those hours poring over documents, spreadsheets, and legal files I'd backed up long ago. My engineering mind kicked in, methodical as ever, mapping out every asset, every loophole. What Layla didn't know, and what I'd never bothered to explain, was that the house, our cozy two-story in the suburbs, wasn't some joint purchase we'd scraped together after the wedding. I'd bought it outright back in 2014, 2 years before we even met, using the inheritance from my mother's estate. She'd passed unexpectedly, leaving me a modest sum that I'd invested wisely. The deed was in my name alone. At first, a separate property designation I'd insisted on after consulting a financial advisor. It was a precaution, he'd said, for unforeseen circumstances. I'd laughed it off back then, but now it felt like foresight. When Layla and I got serious, I'd added her name to the title to make her feel like it was truly ours. A gesture of trust, of building a life together. But I'd kept the original documents notarized and filed away in a safe deposit box at the bank. The house was still legally my separate property under North Carolina law. No community division applied. She could claim we'd mingled funds, but the paper trail was clean. My inheritance paid for it all down to the last penny. I'd even set up a trust for any future appreciation, shielding it from marital claims. As I scrolled through the scanned copies on my screen, sipping coffee that had gone cold, a quiet resolve settled in. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. Then there was Ryan, my so-called best friend, now shacked up in my house with my soon-to-be ex-wife. He didn't know the half of it either. Back when we co-founded that tech startup in our 20s, Green Price Solutions, I'd been the brains behind the code, the one who architected the platform that landed our first big contracts. Ryan handled sales, schmoozing clients with his charm. We'd sold a majority stake 5 years ago, but I'd negotiated to keep 40% of the shares quietly, along with veto rights on key personnel decisions through a silent partnership agreement. The board knew me as Ethan J. Price, the reclusive investor who'd stepped back but still held sway. Ryan thought I'd cash it out completely after the layoffs. He was wrong. I pulled up the company's internal portal, logging in with credentials that still worked. His performance reviews, emails, even his recent promotion, all there. A conflict of interest clause in the ethics policy caught my eye. No personal relationships that could compromise company integrity. Sleeping with a colleague's spouse, that qualified. With a few clicks, I drafted an anonymous tip to the HR director, attaching subtle evidence from public records, nothing traceable back to me. It wasn't personal, it was procedural. By the end of the week, I'd hired Lisa Donovan, the sharpest divorce attorney in Charlotte. Her office was in a sleek high-rise on South Tryon, all glass and steel, a far cry from my dingy apartment. She was in her 50s with the no-nonsense bob haircut and a track record of dismantling messy asset disputes. We met over coffee in her conference room, the city skyline sprawling behind us. "I don't want a bloody fight," I told her, laying out the divorce papers Layla had shoved at me. "No screaming, no scandals. I just want them to understand, don't underestimate a man who chooses silence." Lisa nodded, scanning the docs. "Smart. You've got solid grounds adultery if we push it, but let's focus on the assets. The house, separate property, inheritance funded, original deeds clean." She smiled faintly. "Perfect. We'll file for equitable distribution, but tilt it your way. And this Ryan guy living there? That's trespass on separate property. We can seek eviction." We spent the next hour mapping it out. Petitions, affidavits, a motion to reclaim the house immediately. By the time I left, the paperwork was in motion. A week later, Layla would get served. I could picture her face, that smug grin fading as she read the demands. Full ownership of the house reverted to me, immediate eviction for her and any unauthorized occupants. Sure enough, the process server hit her at home. I got the confirmation email while nursing another coffee. She probably laughed at first, tossing it aside like junk mail. "He's bluffing," she'd say to Ryan. "What could he possibly have? A few socks." But then Ryan's world cracked. 3 days after the filing, he got the email from work suspension pending investigation for ethics violations. Conflict of interest and unprofessional conduct. It read signed off by the board, including my proxy vote. He called Layla in a panic, I imagined pacing the kitchen that used to be mine. "He's suing back for the house," she'd gasp. Ryan would brush it off, voice tense. "Relax. Ethan's got nothing. He's just bitter." But doubt would creep in. They'd hire their own lawyer, scrambling to counter. Me. I kept preparing, reviewing bank statements, locking down accounts, ensuring my inheritance trust was ironclad. No one could touch it. Not Layla, not Ryan, not even a judge, if things went south. As the days blurred sitting in that cafe with the world buzzing around me, I felt a shift. The pain from that night dulled, replaced by focus. They thought they'd stripped me bare. But I was rebuilding piece by piece. The court date loomed, and I was ready. Let them underestimate me one last time. The courtroom in Mecklenburg County Courthouse was a sterile, space-beige walls, wooden benches polished from years of use, and a faint echo that amplified every shuffle of paper or clearing of throat. It was 9:30 a.m. on a crisp October morning, about a month after I'd filed the countersuit. I sat at the plaintiff's table in my gray suit, the one I'd bought for our anniversary 2 years ago now, repurposed for this final act. My hands were steady on the folder in front of me, filled with the documents Lisa had prepared. No nerves, just a quiet anticipation. Across the aisle, Layla looked the part of the aggrieved wife, white dress hugging her figure, makeup heavy around her eyes to hide the shadows of stress. But I could see the cracks, the way her fingers twisted her wedding ring, the quick glances toward the back of the room. Ryan was there too, slouched in the gallery seats, fiddling with his phone like it held some escape hatch. His face had lost that smug edge from the night they'd kicked me out. The suspension from work had hit him hard. Friends in the industry were ghosting him, rumors spreading about his unprofessional conduct. He caught my eye once, but looked away fast. Good. Let him stew. Lisa Donovan stood beside me, sharp as a blade in her tailored black pantsuit. She'd been a godsend, turning my quiet facts into an ironclad case. We have the original deed notarized and filed designating it as separate property under North Carolina Statute 50-20. No community funds were used for the purchase or initial mortgage Mr. Price paid in full. She slid copies across to the bench and opposing counsel. I watched Layla's face as Hale skimmed them. Her eyes widened slightly, then narrowed in confusion. She leaned over, whispering furiously to him. "What? He can't." The judge adjusted his glasses, reviewing the documents. "These appear in order. Mrs. Price, do you contest this?" Hale cleared his throat. "Your Honor, my client was added to the deed post-marriage, which implies joint ownership. A gesture of goodwill," Lisa countered. "But the original intent and funding source remain separate. We've included affidavits from the estate executor and bank records showing the inheritance transfer. Furthermore, the property has been maintained through Mr. Price's separate income streams." Layla shifted uncomfortably, her composure cracking. Ryan from the back looked like he wanted to bolt. His phone buzzed silently in his hand, probably another rejection from a job lead. The judge turned to me. "Mr. Price, any additional claims?" Lisa spoke for us. "Yes, Your Honor. There's an unauthorized occupant currently residing in the home, Mr. Ryan Green." She gestured toward the gallery. "He has no financial contribution to the property and is living there without Mr. Price's consent. We request an immediate eviction order for both Mrs. Price and Mr. Green, effective within 72 hours, as this constitutes trespass on separate property." The courtroom went still. Layla bolted upright. "What? You're evicting me from my own house, Ethan. You can't do this." I met her gaze for the first time that morning, my voice calm and even. "I'm not doing it, Layla. The law is." She turned to the judge, her voice rising. "Your Honor, this is our home. I've lived there for years." Judge Reed rapped his gavel lightly. "Order. Mr. Hale, any rebuttal?" Hale stammered, flipping pages. We argue that the addition to the deed creates equitable interest." "Not according to the statutes," Lisa said firmly. "Separate. Property remains separate unless transmuted by clear intent, which isn't present here." The judge leaned back, considering. Minutes stretched like hours, the only sound the faint hum of the AC and Layla's uneven breathing. Finally he nodded. "Based on the evidence, the court finds the residence to be Mr. Price's separate property. No spousal support or alimony is awarded, as Mr. Price has not violated marital covenants. Mrs. Price and any unauthorized occupants must vacate within 72 hours. Marriage dissolved." The gavel came down with a soft thud that echoed in my chest, not triumph, but closure. Layla slumped in her seat, her face paling as the reality hit. "This can't be happening," she muttered, tears welling. Ryan stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly, face ashen, as he bolted for the door without a word to her. I gathered my things slowly, Lisa patting my shoulder. "Well done. Clean win." As I walked out into the hallway, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, I felt the weight lift. No gloating, no rush of vengeance, just relief. The house was mine again, but more than that, my life was. They'd face the fallout now, packing, scrambling for a place, the whispers in their social circles. Me, I'd head home soon, strip away the traces of them and rebuild. One step at a time. 3 days after the judge's gavel fell, I pulled up to the house early in the morning, the sun just cresting over the Charlotte suburbs, casting long shadows across the lawn I'd mowed 100 times. My old home looked the same on the outside, white siding, wraparound porch, the maple tree we'd planted together in the front yard. But inside, I knew chaos reigned. The eviction order was ironclad, 72 hours to vacate, no extensions. I'd given them the full time, no need to rush. Lisa had advised against showing up myself, but I wanted this closure, not to gloat, but to end it properly. The front door was propped open, boxes scattered on the porch like debris from a storm. I heard muffled voices inside Layla's sharp directives, Ryan's grumbling retorts. I stepped up, knocking lightly on the frame. Layla appeared first, her hair tied back messily, no makeup, wearing sweatpants and a faded t-shirt. The arrogance from the courtroom was gone, replaced by a weary resignation. She froze when she saw me, her hands clutching a stack of clothes. "Ethan," she said, her voice flat, "you're here." "Just checking on the progress," I replied evenly, glancing past her. Ryan was in the living room, slamming books into a box, his face flushed with frustration. He didn't acknowledge me, just muttered something under his breath and kept packing. No help from friends. I noted no moving truck, no extra hands. Their circle had evaporated once the whispers started the affair, the eviction, Ryan's suspension turning into whispers of permanent blacklisting. Layla set down the clothes, wiping her hands on her pants. "We're almost done. You can have your precious house back." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope I'd prepared. "Here, something for you." She took it hesitantly, her fingers brushing mine for a split second. Inside were a few old photos our wedding day, mostly. One of her in her white dress laughing as I spun her on the dance floor, another of us cutting the cake, her hand over mine. Simple moments, frozen in time. She opened it, her breath catching as she flipped through. Why give me these?" "Keep them?" I said. "Memories are yours too." Her eyes welled up as she stared at the top photo, the one where she was beaming my arm around her waist like the world was ours. "You loved me so much back then." I nodded. "I did. Once." She looked up, tears spilling over. No more defiance, just raw regret. Ryan called from inside. "Layla, where's the tape?" But she ignored him, stepping closer to me. "Ethan, I didn't think it would end like this." I didn't move. "Neither did I. But you made your choices." She turned away, then shoving the envelope into a box, her shoulders slumping. Ryan emerged, glaring at me as he hauled a suitcase down the steps. "This is bullshit, man. You really had to drag us through court." I met his eyes. "You dragged yourselves." He scoffed, loading the car without another word. They were done by noon, boxes crammed into Ryan's SUV, the house echoing empty behind them. I watched from the porch as they drove off, Layla in the passenger seat, not looking back. A few months passed. I heard through mutual acquaintances Ryan got fired outright. His ethics violation staining his resume. No one in Charlotte's tech scene wanted the drama. He bounced between temp jobs, his charm wearing thin. Layla, she rented a tiny apartment south of the city, working as a receptionist at a beauty clinic, the kind of place she'd once mocked as beneath her. Long hours, low pay, no glamour. Me, I dove back into work. Freelance turned into consulting gigs, then a new role at a startup where my old skills shone. I renovated the house, slowly, fresh paint, a small garden out back, a swing on the porch for quiet evenings. It felt like mine again, not haunted by what was, but ready for what could be. The pain faded, replaced by peace. I'd closed that door, and for the first time in years, I breathed easy. 6 months had slipped by since the eviction, and the house felt like a new chapter, renovated, walls painted in soft grays, a small herb garden thriving out back, and that porch swing creaking gently in the afternoon breeze. It was a quiet Saturday in Charlotte, the kind where the sun hung low and golden, warming the air without the summer's bite. I'd just brewed a fresh cup of tea, Earl Grey with a splash of milk, and was settling into the armchair by the window when the doorbell chimed. Odd I wasn't expecting anyone. Setting the mug down, I walked to the door, peering through the peephole. Layla. She stood on the porch, looking smaller than I remembered, her hair pulled back. Simply no makeup to hide the lines of exhaustion around her eyes. A plain sweater and jeans, nothing like the polished woman who'd once commanded rooms. I opened the door, keeping my expression neutral. Layla. She shifted, her weight hands clasped in front of her like a shield. Ethan, I just wanted to talk. Can I come in? I stepped aside, gesturing her into the foyer, but no further. The house was mine now, and I wasn't about to let old ghosts wander freely. She glanced around, her eyes lingering on the changes, the new rug, the framed photo of a mountain hike I'd taken alone last month. It looks different. Better. What do you want, Layla? I asked, crossing my arms. She met my gaze, her voice soft, trembling at the edges. I'm sorry for everything. The way I treated you. Ryan, the divorce. I was wrong. You once said I'd regret it, and I thought you were just angry. But now I get it. I do. I nodded slowly. I didn't say that hoping you'd regret it. I said it because I saw what was coming. I just wanted you to choose differently. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over. If I hadn't kicked you out that night, if I'd stayed, could we have fixed it? The question hung there heavy. I thought back to the laughs we'd shared, the plans we'd made. But those memories were faded now, overwritten by her choices. No, I said gently. You didn't lose me that night. You lost me long before the moment you decided I wasn't enough, that you deserved more than the man who'd given you everything. She sobbed, then covering her face, shoulders shaking. I didn't reach out, didn't comfort her. That chapter was closed. After a moment, she straightened, wiping her cheeks. I understand. Goodbye, Ethan. She turned and walked down the steps, her footsteps fading on the driveway. I watched her go, no anger stirring in me, no satisfaction either, just peace. The door clicked shut behind me as I returned inside, picking up my tea. Life moved on, work thriving, friends' real days filled with purpose. She'd chase her regrets. I'd build my future. In the end, she'd throw me out like nothing, only to realize too late. The silent man that night had taken with him everything that made a house a home. When the door closed, she hadn't just lost a husband. She'd lost the one person who'd forgiven her without question.